It's day 3 of our trip. We're trying to play at as many casinos as we can. So we head down to the Aria. There's a spot open in a 2-5 game. So we get our chips, 1500 max, and we take our seat. This is our longest session of the trip so far, and we have a lot of hands to go over. So let's just get right into it. When we play, we try to get involved as soon as we can, and this hand is no different. So third hand dealt in on the button. We look down at ace 10 offsuit. The low jack makes it 15. I complete, and both blinds make the call as well. So 4 ways to a flop. Flop is 10 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 6 of hearts. Both blinds check, and the low jack, the initial aggressor, makes it 25. And this flop is way better for my range and the blinds range than the pre-flop aggressor. So in position, I raise it up, I make it 80. Both blinds get out of the way, onto the low jack. He thinks for a little bit, but gives his cards back to the dealer. So small pot, but always a good way to start the session, winning one early. The very next hand dealt in, we're moving up in the world. We look down at ace jack offsuit. Not by much, but we're moving up in the world. Under the gun 1 limps, folds around to the hijack. He makes it 20, and we decide to 3-bet it. We make it 65. The button cold calls my 65, which I wasn't expecting at all. And another thing I wasn't expecting, the limper actually 4-bets to 265. So the old limp 4-bet. The hijack gets out of the way, and this guy was an older gentleman, and it's only my 4th hand dealt in, so that's all the information I really have on the guy. And even though I'm in position, this line is just crazy strong. So there's not much for me to do besides fold. And sadly, the button gets out of the way as well, so we didn't even see a flop. This hand, we're in the under the gun straddle. We have ace deuce offsuit. Folds around all the way to the small blind. Small blind min clicks it, throws in 20. The big blind folds. And remember what I told you guys about min clicks? I just don't fold to them, so I throw in 10 more. Flop comes ace high. He bets out, he bets 25. I make the call. Turn is a 7. He slows down and checks. I figured if he had an ace, he'd continue betting. So I take it upon myself to bet out 45. I don't have to make it too big, because if he's pot controlling with a bigger ace, he's gonna call pretty much any size. But 45 seems to get the job done. He folds and we win. All right, before we even explain this hand, feel free to roast me in the comments, because I feel like I deserve it. We're in the straddle again, and we look down at 2 red 9s. The under the gun 1 makes it 25. Folds around back to me. And you can go either way, 3-betting or just calling. And we just decide to call and try to set mine. So heads up to a flop out of position, and the flop comes 2, 3, 4 with 2 clubs. I check in flow. He decides to bet out 35. Another coin flip on whether I should put in more money or not, but we take the passive route and just make the call. I say it can go either way of raising or calling, but now really analyzing the hand, I really should be putting in more money, because there's really not a turn card I'm gonna like, and we're out of position. Because the only cards we're really gonna like is a 6, 7, or 8. That's not a club. Because 10 through ace is obviously a card higher than our pair. And pairing the board is kind of neutral. I mean, if he has a higher pocket pair, we're just, I guess, destined to lose money. And a side note too, this guy has around 2.5k in his stack. So he's in position and he completely covers us. So by raising now, while the pot is smaller, I can really get a gauge on where I stand in the hand. But just telling you what I did in the moment. So heads up still, out of position to a turn. And the turn is ace of spades. So obviously a card higher than our pair. If he was just betting out with ace king, ace queen, he's now beating us. Yes, any 5 makes a straight, which I don't think he should have any 5s in his range, being the pre-flop aggressor. I should have more 5s in my range than him. All that being said, I still decide to check in flow to him, and he actually decides to check back. So all right, we get to see a river for free. But again, I don't really know what I'm hoping to see on the river, to be honest. There's not many cards. The river is the 8 of clubs. So a card lower than our pair, but the obvious front door flush does get there. And we're faced with a decision. We could either lead out and represent the flush, or we can just check and flow and hopefully he checks back and our 9s are good. I do decide to represent the flush and I lead out for a pot size bet of 110. Maybe I should have overbet pot, like 1.5, even 2x pot to 200. Really representing and polarizing my hand, saying I really have a high flush or nothing at all. He asks how much I bet. The dealer says 110. And he thinks and thinks and actually raises to 400.
You crushed it, really? Wow. I don't know if a straight is good here.
As you heard, I do a little table talk, some BS table talk, because I did not have a straight, just to try to get a read on the guy. But he doesn't budge, and even now that I'm looking back at the hand, I'm like, what the heck could he have? Like, maybe pocket kings with the king of clubs, because he knows I can't have the nuts. I'm interested to see what you guys think he had, because I fold, and he returns his cards face down, so we'll never know what he had.
Very strange, very strange.
Been super card dead the last hour at this table, and there has been like zero action. I go to the front and I request a table change, but they don't have one available yet. They need another player to come in before I'm able to move. So here we are. In the meantime, we have king 5 of clubs in the cutoff. The low jack makes it 15, and I 3-bet, but I misclicked. I only make it 40. Meant to make it 3x, 45. And you can even tell the way I put out my chips, it wasn't as smooth. I realized I only had $40 in my hand, thought I had 50, but you can't really go back to your stack and put out more money. It has to be one smooth motion, and it clearly wasn't. Folds to him and he calls, so heads up to a flop. And the flop is a good one. It's ace of clubs, 10 of clubs, 3 of diamonds. So we have backdoor straight, both ends, and we have the nut flush draw. He checks to me, and we down bet to 35. For that price, he calls, and the dealer burns and turns, and it's the queen of clubs. So right away, we hit our flush. We have the best hand possible. Always a good feeling at the poker table when you have the best possible hand, and the hardest decision you have to make with yourself is how much money do I put in the middle? He checks again. And we want to get value from all his holdings. So we make it a little less than half pot, about 40%. We throw out 65. He doesn't disappoint and he makes the call. The river comes and it's a king of spades. So we still have the nuts, but it's not really a good card for us. Any jack makes a straight. And if he does have a jack, great. But if he had something like 2 pair, it's going to get hard to get value because the flush is there and there's 4 cards to a straight. He checks for a third time, and again, the hardest decision, the best hardest decision. How much are we going to put in the middle? And we decide to overbet the pot this time and make it 325, hoping he has anything to call or just doesn't believe us. But he folds and we couldn't get the last bit of value with our nut flush, but still rack in a decent sized pot.
A bad river.
Exactly 1 orbit later, we're in the cutoff again. Folds around to me, and we have pocket jacks. We make it 15, and only the big blind makes the call. So heads up to a flop in position, and the flop comes 8-2-4 rainbow. Driest of dry boards. He checks, and we make it 15 again. This amount is suitable for him, so he makes the call. The turn is the best card imaginable. It's a jack, an offsuit jack. So not only do we hit our set, it's a full rainbow on board. So we have the best possible hand at this time. He checks to me, and I'm not really scared of any river card at this point. I'm kind of hoping he catches up of a 3 of a kind of his own, or maybe some sort of 2 pair. So I check back, hoping he either catches up a little or tries to make a move on the river. The river is a brick, a blank, so we still have the nuts. I honestly don't even remember what the river was. Doesn't really matter. So hoping he goes crazy and tries to make a move, but sadly he doesn't. He checks it again for a 3rd time. There's only $60 in the middle, and I want to get a little bit of value from my top set, but I don't want to go too big, like overbet crazy. So I go 3/4 pot and make it 45. So even giving him a decent price, he still decides to fold. And we take down another small pot, but it's always good to catch the nuts. Not too long after, we finally get our table change. Looking around, and there's some decent sized stacks around me, so I'm hoping that this table is a lot better than the last one. Already a good sign. We see a lot of straddling going on, and we're in the big blind this hand. There's an under the gun straddle to 10. There's 3 limpers, and we look down at king queen offsuit. We're not going multi-way out of position with this hand, so we bump it up to 70. With so much interest in the hand already, could have made it a little bigger, like 80, but it's okay. We narrow the field. Just the straddler and the button make the call. So 3 ways in between 2 opponents to a flop, and it's ace to 8 with 2 spades. Ace high board, usually good for the pre-flop aggressor, so I c-bet 50. The straddler makes the call, but the button gets out of the way, so heads up to a turn. It's the 4 of clubs, so 2 flush draws now on board. So I think if I had an ace here, I would continue to put pressure on either his flush draws or smaller aces. So we double the original bet and we make it 100. Thinking if he calls, we're gonna put a lot of pressure on the river. But he disagrees with the $100 bet and makes it 300. So nothing really here to do besides fold, and we got caught trying to bluff with king high. He later tells me he had ace 8, so he flopped top 2 pair, which makes sense. I mean, I believe him. He really has no reason to lie. Moving on to this hand, we have king queen again, but this time the suited variety. First to act, under the gun, we make it 15. Under the gun 1 makes the call, and the small blind makes the call. So in between 2 opponents again, 3 ways to a flop. And it comes queen jack 3 rainbow. Small blind checks, and I c-bet $20. Doesn't scare anybody, they both make the call. The turn is a 10 of hearts. We pick up the open-ended straight draw. Any ace or 9 gives us a straight. Even though we pick up additional equity, still in between 2 opponents, and a turn card that definitely could help their hand out as well, I decide to check when the small blind checks to me. And it seems like the under the gun 1 senses weakness, and he throws out a bet of 85. The small blind gets out of the way, and I wasn't really checking to check fold. If anything, I was gonna check call, possibly even check raise, depending on the sizing. But he goes about 80% pot, so I take that into consideration and just make the call. So no additional straights or flushes come in. Doesn't really change the context of the board. So I decided to check in flow, expecting him to throw out another bet, but he checks it back. We flip over our hand, and it's good. Finally, in this hand, we look at a premium, our very first premium, it seems like, all night. Pocket kings on the button. Middle position limps, the hijack limps, and we're definitely gonna put some more money in the middle. We make it 45. Small blind, the same guy who we've been battling with pretty much all night at this table, the one who said he had top 2 pair when he raised 300. He makes the call, and the hijack makes the call. So 3 ways to a flop. And guess what comes out when you're holding pocket kings? You guessed it, an ace. So it's ace, queen, 7, but there's 3 diamonds on board, and we have the king of diamonds. So this flop is relatively good for our hand and for our range. So when it checks to me, I c-bet, I make it 75. Not expecting to take it down with just 1 bet, and sure enough, the guy to my left, the small blind, makes the call, and the hijack folds. So heads up to a turn, and it's the 10 of clubs. So we pick up additional outs. If we are behind an ace, we now pick up a gutter. Any jack gives us Broadway. He checks again, and knowing he's not going to fold any ace, and it would suck to get check raised again by the same guy, so we decided to check back, hoping to improve on the river. And we do. We hit our nut flush with the 2 of diamonds. Another one of those boards where it's awesome that we have the nuts, but it's going to be hard to get value because the top 3 diamonds are on board. Well, 2 on the board and 1 in my hand. So the best case scenario is he has the jack of diamonds. But even with the jack of diamonds, I don't think he's going to call too big of a bet. So we have to figure out a sizing where he can call with that hand, or possible straight that he may have, or just non-believing, or just a crying call from top pair. So when he checks again to me for a 3rd time, we decide to go super small and only bet $40. So throwing out $40 to a pot that has around 300 in it, really just trying to milk out any additional money that I can. He calls pretty much right away. I say I have the nuts. He said, I got the 2nd nuts. So catching the nuts again is always good, but haven't been really getting paid with them. So it's kind of like a love-hate feeling right now.
That was about the only amount to get a call.
This hand gets a little strange. It's pretty straightforward, but the ending is like a little wonky. We have ace queen on the button, folds around to me, I make it 15, and only the big blind calls. The flop is king 9-3 with 2 hearts. He checks, I continuation bet 25, and he quickly makes a call. The turn is a queen of clubs, so I pick up 2nd pair, top kicker. He checks, I'm not slowing down, I make it 60. He calls again. The river is a 10, offsuit 10, so the front door flush misses, but any jack makes it straight now. He checks for a 3rd time, and I don't really think I need to turn my queen into a bluff. I mean, if he missed his hearts, his flush draw, he's not going to call any size bet. So my queen, decent showdown value. I check it back. I say I have a queen, and the reason why it gets a little weird is because this guy didn't really speak good English. So when I said I have a queen, he takes a while to flip over his cards, and when he flipped over his cards, he had a straight. He turned a straight. He had jack 10. So it was just weird because I didn't expect to see what he flipped over. He turned the nuts, didn't raise me, which is fine, and the river didn't lead out. So it was just kind of weird to me the way it played out. And it felt like a mini slow roll, but because this guy didn't really speak good English, I was like, all right, no, I'll let it slide. We're down a few hundred at this point. Not bad, but still looking to get unstuck. And what better hand to do that with than pocket aces? We're 5-handed at this time, and we're in middle position. We make it a standard 15, and one by one, they all fold. What can you do? But they didn't get cracked. Remember, positive, always positive thinking. It's so easy to get on tilt, and once you're there, it's hard to get out. So try to stay up, try to stay positive, and good things will happen. Trust me. We had bomb pots every dealer change. So every time a new dealer would come, everybody that wanted to would put $15 in the middle, and we all go to a flop. And this is how they pretty much went down. This one, we probably had the best starting hand out of all the bomb pots. Jack 7 off. Don't even remember what position I was in this hand, but the flop comes horrible, and we fold to 1 bet. I know, super exciting, but I think we're 0 for 6 in bomb pots this night. A few hands later, we have king 9 of diamonds in the hijack. The low jack limps. I raise it up to 20. The small blind calls, and the limper, the low jack, makes the call as well. So 3 ways to a flop, and it's jack 9-8 rainbow. They check to me, and with this board totally not even hitting my range whatsoever, even with middle pair, I decide to check back. The turn, however, does hit our range and our hand. It's a king. So the backdoor flush draw does come in, but now we have 2 pair. They check to me again, and it's time to go for some value. We make it 40, but sadly they fold. So no value for us again. I think that's gonna be the title of this video. No value at Aria. But if any of you have played poker for a substantial amount of time, you should know that these are pretty much the hands 90 to 95% of the time how they look. And I'm just showing the natty or not of the life of a poker player. So showing the natural side of hands like these, and sometimes the not natural side of big all-ins or huge bluffs or hero calls. But don't fool yourself, it's not always like you see on TV or on YouTube, Hustler, Casino Live, where putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in the middle with fourth pair. Don't get me wrong, I do want to play that big eventually one day, but until then, gotta just grind at these stakes and hopefully work my way up. The last hand we're gonna go over is pretty much the highlight of the video, but not really the way you think. You'll get a kick out of it, I'm sure. We have Jack 10 of clubs in the small blind. Probably my favorite hand, to be honest. Not necessarily of clubs, but Jack 10 suited. It's just so playable post flop, and you can win with multitude of ways with this hand. The middle position makes it 15. The hijack makes the call, and I should be 3-bet squeezing in the small blind, but it's been a long 72 hours already of poker, and this session has been pretty long as well, so I'm just kind of fried at the moment. So closing the action, we just make the call. 3 ways to a flop, and it comes queen 2-2 with 2 clubs. We check to the aggressor, he bets 30. The hijack gets out of the way, and with our flush draw not going anywhere, we make the call. The turn is a king of diamonds, so now we have an open-ended straight draw to go along with our flush draw. So I check again, thinking majority of the time this guy is gonna bet out and I'm gonna check raise. He does bet out, this time for 65, and I kind of butcher this hand because I don't check raise like I said I was gonna do. I just decided to call. Mistake number 2, but here we are. 2 river, and it's a 3 of hearts, so total blank. I check to him, basically waving the white flag, giving up. He thinks for a little bit. I'm expecting him to put out a massive bet, but he checks it back. So I'm like, all right, cool. I get to see his hand. I get to see what he was betting with this whole time. So I'm waiting for him to show, but the dealer informs me that I have to show first. And in my head, I'm like, what? Why? Like, he was the last aggressor. He was betting this whole time. Like, the last aggressor is supposed to show first, right? But the dealer said there was no bets on the river, so technically there was no aggressor. So the way the rule works, if there's no bets on the river, the way you show your cards at showdown is in order. So since I'm the small blind, I'm required to show my hand first. But I don't really want to show my hand first. I mean, I have jack high, like there's no way I could win. So I'm basically mucking my cards, but I kind of get that like person in the back of your head that tells you to do something, and it tells me for some reason to flip over my hand. So I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna flip. I want to see what you have. Like, I want to see what you beat me with or what you're betting with. Again, more information for the future. So I flip over my hand, and he looks at his cards, he looks at the board, he looks back at his cards, and he kind of laughs, and he says, you're good. So we take down that $235 pot with jack high. So another rule here in Vegas that I wasn't aware of, and let me know down below in the comment section if you knew about this rule or not. If it's at every casino in Vegas or just certain ones, I'd really like to know. I stay for another half hour, give or take, playing, but the table eventually breaks. And it's been a super long session already. I wasn't really in the mindset to start a whole new session per se on another table. So I just rack up my chips, head to the cage, and cash out. All right, we're done with day number 3. Finished the session at the Aria. In for 15, out for 14, 27. So loss of $73. I don't know. It's been a lot of poker the last 3 days, and yeah, my brain's fried. But not a lot of things interesting happened this session, to be honest. I mean, I was on that first table not long at all, and I was like, I got to get out of here. So I made that table change, and even making the table change, it wasn't that interesting. I mean, all my premiums, aces, like no action, and kings. I mean, yeah, I rivered the nuts with 4 diamonds on the board, but how are you going to get paid with ace, king, queen, 10 of diamonds on the board? I mean, it's just hard to do. Pocket pairs, no sets. I mean, 3-betting, decent hands, and just not getting called. Like, fold. One lady was suggesting bomb pots every dealer change, and for about 3 hours it was just that. But every 30 minutes, $15, I was 0 for 6 on bomb pots. I think my highest bomb pot was that jack of diamonds, 7 of clubs, so jack 7 off, and just catching like bottom pair, if that, in those bomb pots. So I don't know, uneventful, but made the best of it. Actually, the last interesting hand was the very last one, was winning with jack high, so that was kind of cool. But other than that, nothing really cool. But again, day 3 in the books, vlog number 3, and can't wait to see what happens tomorrow. Who knows where we'll be. Do all that good stuff, like, comment, and yeah, so you get notified, see what the rest of this trip holds. We're almost halfway there. Again, here 7 days. Day number 3 done. Always remember, I'm Matty Ice. Peace out.